I'm wondering if we should make a start, Zoe.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So just to give you well, actually Zoe will explain the format, so I'll leave it to her.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you for
Morning.
joining our May In Leeds Breakfast Club. Minotti, myself and Joe are part of the In Leeds steering group. Sorry, Katie as well.
I think definitely when she joins as well. I don't know if she's there.
Perfect.
Apologies if I haven't seen you.
And I think Sarah's also joined in.
Oh, wonderful.
So
there are
quite a few of us, yeah.
Perfect. So Joe, can you just go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Fab. So if you are a regular to our meetings, you'll recognise this slide. So Lean In was started by Sheryl Sandberg, who is actually the COO of Facebook, and she was working in a very male-dominated field and found that there weren't many women in positions that she was finding herself in. So she conducted research and started Lean In to try and understand why that was the case. And from there, Lean In was born. So Lean In is an international network for women, and as this is on screen, 43,000 circles across the world. So we have a huge presence and we have a wonderful network that you're able to tap into regardless of where you are in the world. So Lean In Leeds is actually the second largest community in the UK, just following London. So we have about 700 members. So it's a wonderful community for you to tap into. And if you sign up to the Lean In Leeds emails on leanin.org, you'll be able to receive emails from both ourselves and also find out other members of the community. We host all of our events for free, so this is our second Zoom event. We're finding it's going quite well, but feel free to leave any messages in the chat bar if you have any ideas that you'd like to share, and then throughout the event this morning, we'll be using the chat function to try and promote conversations as well. We also have a mentoring program that's just relaunched, and we're actually trying to find some further mentors. So if you're interested, it'd be wonderful to reach out to our email or any of our social networks that are just on the right-hand side there. So feel free to drop us a note and we can share any further details about that. And lastly, this is actually a volunteer-led network. So the 12 of us, as we mentioned, there are a few on the call today, we manage all of our events. So it's just a wonderful way for us to support Leeds and our network as well. It's just the next slide. So we have the 3 C's, which is our code of conduct. So as was mentioned by Joe, these Zoom events are recorded. However, we do want to promote confidentiality where desired. So please ensure that anything that's particularly private doesn't really go beyond here if it's not wanted to be shared. Communication is also a key part, and it's something, as I mentioned, we can use the chat function on the right-hand side. So we have a few sessions or games that Joe mentioned, so we'll want to try and promote your inclusion into those.
Oh, can everyone see the slides? I've got a message from Jill, sorry, just before we move on, saying that she can't see the slides.
I think she'll just need to select the option at the right-hand side of the screen, swap shared screen with video, so she can see the screen and the speaker view.
Thanks, Minotti. Jill, did that help? Okay, good. It looks like most people can see them. Let us know if you continue to get stuck. Jill, you can also message people privately in the chat. So if you want to message Minotti if you get stuck, then she can help you a bit further with that if that didn't solve it for you. Sorry, Zoe.
Not a problem at all. So just onto the next slide, please. And then lastly, we obviously have a commitment to our network and to our members. So although we say you can follow us on social and you can follow kind of what the network is doing, absolutely be proactive and reach out to other members, and you can support each other. You can form smaller circles if you find there are people that you have things in common with. If you're going through similar experiences, work in a similar field, it might be a great way of you connecting with each other and supporting each other on a smaller level. So feel free to reach out to each other, or if you want to ask us any questions, you can also message us. And then I'll pass over to Jo to lead the session this morning.
Thanks, Zoe. Right, morning everybody. So any of you that do know me, you might wonder why I'm doing a session on the snakes and ladders of leadership, being that I'm not a leadership coach like Claire. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm a commercial finance specialist. I've worked across many businesses, both micro entities up to PLCs, across the last 20 years. I started in a call centre, then worked as an office junior, and slowly and steadily worked my way up to various roles, including a finance director. And I'm currently also, the business that I run is in my spare time because I've got loads of it. And I also work full-time for a charity, a debt management charity called Step Change, who do some fantastic work, and I'm really enjoying that. And the reason I'm telling you all of this really is just to give you an idea of some of the reasons that I've got some knowledge on this topic that I'd like to share with you. And these are really just my opinions and things that I've learned along the way that I think could be helpful. And, you know, working your way up in the finance profession can be quite challenging. There's a lot of competition, there's a lot of deadlines, there's a lot of late nights. So all of that culminates in the message that I'm going to give you today. So it just probably gives you a bit of a flavour of who I am and why I'm talking about this. But you can look at my LinkedIn CV if you want to know more. So going on to the actual presentation then. So this is more what I think it would look like. But so the snakes and ladders of leadership, what we think our careers will look like is something along these lines. Leave education, get a job, work your way up the ladder, achieve success, get rich, maybe don't care about getting rich, and then retire. Lovely. Doesn't really happen much in reality, but some people are extremely lucky. So what it's more likely to look like. Hello, for the person that just joined, we're just getting into the presentation so you haven't missed much. And just to say, this is being recorded, so if you'd like to hide your video, if you wouldn't like your video to be shared on social media at any point. So really going on to what it's really like then. So you leave education at some point, you get a job, possibly after education, you might join a grad scheme, or you might do something completely unexpected. You might just fall into stuff because you don't know what you're doing. You might transfer career, you might do that on purpose or by accident. You work your way up the ladder, possibly slowly, sometimes really quickly, but number 4 tells us a bit more about that. Many obstacles often arise compared to what we were expecting. Sometimes your peers get promoted above you. Sometimes you get promoted above them, and that can cause its own complications. And sometimes it goes really well. So all of these things are a bit unknown as we go through the rocky road of the career journey. But you finally get a leadership role, you love it, but no one really shows you how to own it. No one gives you the education, no one tells you how to speak at these different types of meetings that you're going to. So you've got to learn all that, and a lot of it's intuition, self-learning, and we'll go on to a bit more of that later on. So, or you get a leadership role and you hate it because it's actually not the thing that you should be doing, but then you need the money and you can't step back and you're stuck in this catch-22. Then you get paid, so you finally achieve your ultimate goal of leadership. You may or may not enjoy it, you may love it. Constantly strive to receive fair remuneration. That's a hard one, isn't it? But often you do get that if you get quite high up, but you never know. You might then use that to go float and set up your own business and then realise actually a lot of these skills that you've learned weren't applicable to your own business. So that's another way of looking at leadership, because leadership's not just necessarily about leading people. It could be about actually leading your clients or your suppliers and on a journey that you want to go on as well, because the skills are actually very similar, and that's something to be aware of. And then your business might fail because of those things, so you start again. And then if you don't learn any new things, then you might still go around this self-perpetuating journey and then finally give up, which would be a real big shame if actually there's just a few tweaks you need to make. So first, the snakes, and I promise this presentation isn't all negative, it's very 50-50 and hopefully ends up with a nice positive message at the end. So the snakes. So I've pulled these from all over the place, but I've tried to put in references so you can see where I got them from where possible. So 83% of businesses say it's important to develop business leaders at all levels, but only 5% of businesses have implemented leadership development at all levels. You'll start to see a theme of why this might not all work. 77% of organisations report they're experiencing a leadership gap. 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every single day. And more than 6 out of 10 millennials say their leadership skills aren't being fully developed by their managers. So I don't really think I need to say much more on this slide because it truly does speak for itself. It's pretty obvious what's going on. I guess the thing I would add to this is why. Why do we think that businesses are saying this, but it's not really happening? And I think it does happen for some really good, forward-thinking businesses, but there's a lot yet to catch up. My view as to why is because it's important for the businesses to create a positive message, to attract people into the business, but I don't always think that the business has maybe the budgets ring-fenced to commit to what is really needed to develop the leaders of the future. And I think the other problem is there's only a very few amount of levels at the top. Morning, Jill. We just wanted to mention that this is being recorded, so feel free to hide your video if you wouldn't want it to be shared at any point. We've just entered into the sort of middle of the presentation, but quick summary, bit about me, but actually I happen to know Jill, so I won't go over it again. Talked about what we expect our career journey to look like, what it really looks like, and we've just gone through some quick statistics, which I'll just, which are on the screen here actually, so you can have a quick read through those. I'm just about to move on to the next slide. So that's all I really wanted to say. The fact is that if we need businesses to have 25,000 leaders at the end of the journey, that's fine, but realistically I don't think that businesses can afford to develop everybody. And so it's important that if you want to be that person that's being developed into a leadership role, that you actually make yourself known, and there's lots of ways that you can do that. So a few more snakes and then we'll go on to the ladders. So 58% of managers say they didn't receive management training, and a lot of business, there are some really good businesses that do really develop people internally, but there's a significant amount that don't, or the training that's available is not quite appropriate for what you might need in your role or your specialism to get to the next level. And that's the thing I found the most challenging. And some people are very proactive, they might put in business cases to get training. And I've also found that once you get to about the middle level of management, it's very, very challenging to get training in most businesses, because you already have the piece of paper possibly that helps you to be able to do your job at that level. So that's something that really needs a bit of thought, in my opinion. 32% of UK employees lack confidence to put ideas forward. And I find this really interesting because I don't know about everybody else, but most businesses I've worked at do have ideas hubs, and they do have forums, and they do have, all of these things on Workplace, if they have it as well, where there's an opportunity for employees to speak up and put themselves forward with their ideas. Some of them do get implemented. But the question is, are employers then encapsulating that skill set and actually going, oh, that's a person I should be developing? And I think that's maybe where some of the gap is, but I think then it's an opportunity, if someone's idea does get selected, for them to actually put themselves forward a bit more and say, look, I've got some really good ideas here, you've clearly used them, how can we make me develop a bit better? Probably not in such a, I expect this way, but you get the gist. And 82% of employees don't trust their boss to tell the truth. And I found this quite sad. I wasn't sure whether to share this one, but I think it's important because we're here to speak the truth and to talk about things that are a real genuine concern for us. So I think it's one to highlight. And some of the ways around that can be maybe that you make sure that whatever it is that you're wanting to do if you really believe in it, you find a way around that situation. So it's not very good to always copying your manager's manager when you're trying to achieve things. But if you make enough noise and talk to enough people about your idea and get lots of people excited, eventually it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You'll find that your ideas become something that everyone's talking about and a little bit of a buzz. And sometimes that's the way around it. So it doesn't always have to be a negative thing if you feel like that your manager's interests aren't altruistic in terms of your role and what you're achieving. So what can we do about this? So, bit cheesy, but it is a really, really good quote. So we've got a little bit of Mahatma Gandhi over to the, well, it's my left, it's probably your right. Be the change you want to see in the world. I'm sure we've all heard that one, but it really is true. How do you overcome obstacles? You know, what's your approach? So I've just mentioned a few things there, but there's many ways that you can problem solve your dilemma of how you overcome your challenges. Should you be a leader? This is a really important one. You might want the money, you might want the success, you might just want to actually achieve something in your career for a personal reason, for a goal. But are you good at managing people? Do you understand the bigger concept of your business, your industry? And if not, could you develop yourself to do those things? Because the worst thing that can happen to other people is for you to become a leader if you're not ready. Do you ask questions? So I am the most inquisitive person on earth, and I found it really helpful, and probably lots of people find it quite annoying. However, what I've found as a result of that is I get to learn a lot of parts of a business very quickly that a lot of people won't learn if they're doing a very specific role. And just the pure reason for that is getting together with other people in other departments and really being interested in what it is that they do, what they're trying to achieve, and how you can help them as well. It just gives you that broader lateral thinking. Do you develop yourself? So I have spoken to so many people in my career that don't do anything themselves in their own time. They're sort of, well, I've worked 9 till 5, that's it, done. You may well get to leadership that way, but most people I see getting to that level have done a lot of self-investment to understand, you know, what they need to develop to get to where they need to be. And I think that becomes obvious to people at a more senior level, and they go, right, that person's prepared to put in the effort, and that's what we need in a leader. And it's not working 24 hours a day to develop yourself. Hi, Sarah. Just to let you know, this is being recorded, so if you don't want to be on video, if you could just hide your video, if that's okay. We're about halfway through the slides, but if you would like to email us, we can email you them out at the end. So we're just talking about the ladders. So we've gone through a few of the snakes, and we're just talking about some questions you should ask yourself if you want to be on the ladder to success, really. So the questions are all on the screen. So do you have the skills? And finally, do you network? And this is one I wanted to talk about a little bit more. So I discovered networking probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And I don't just mean Lean In, which I would say is a diversity and inclusion and support network, but also thinking about who your network is. So for example, you might get contacted by recruitment agencies quite a lot. And some people regard those recruitment agencies as a bit pesky sometimes, but actually they should be your best friends. Those are the people that can help you in your career. They can give you guidance if you listen to them. A lot of people don't, but actually they have some very good advice. They see many people in your situation. So that's a really good one. I think another thing that's really important is maybe going to industry related events or events related to your specialism. So for example, I'm an accountant, so I might go to financial events, or a bid manager might go to the bid management. They have an annual conference and such like. And I know there's loads of events in digital, and the reason it's important is because you learn loads from your peers, but you learn it from people in different settings. Those people can then become someone that can develop an opportunity for you, but could also help you to understand your gaps. They could also help you to just get a bit of support later down the line, or maybe when you're becoming a leader. So there's so many reasons that the network actually, as you get into a more senior role, can become the most important thing that we've got. So I felt quite happy about this slide. I don't know why. It's just a nice little pictorial of what I've been talking about, really. So I'm just going to my page on this one. Right. So this person at the bottom of the ladder is effectively learning the skills for the job. So making sure they truly understand the baseline skills that they need to start to progress. The next person has to go, right, well, this is the same person as the next person, even though they all are different people. So then you've got to figure out the puzzle, and the puzzle can be really different depending on the role you're in. So for example, in one business, you might have a really massive operational function and a very, very small admin function, but loads of complex contracts. Or in another business, you might have a few people that do everything. You know, in a smaller business, you kind of have to be a bit of a jack of all trades. In every business, you need to master your industry if you really want to get somewhere. You need to understand what's going on in the outside world and in the inside world. You also need to understand your cultural beliefs, who you've got working for you, what their skills are, why it's important to bring the right people on the journey when you're doing a piece of work, whatever that may be. So that part for me is fundamental. Then, as we've discussed, networking like crazy, but not just externally, but also internally. So this is the part about gaining rapport, getting to know your peers across the business where appropriate. And I don't mean don't do any work all day when I say this. And I'm sorry if a lot of you might already know a lot of this, but just bear with me if you do. So then it's about hard work. I think a lot of hard work. I think, you know, I'm not saying work 24 hours a day, but the more hard work you put in, it becomes obvious to people. Hi, Marina. Just to say that this is being recorded, and if you want a copy of the slides after, if you email the Lean In inbox, then we can get a copy over to you. So then once you've done the hard work, it's about asking questions. Again, you know, and I've said this many times throughout this presentation, you need to be making sure you're asking lots of questions so that you can really understand who you are, what you can offer, and harness other people's skills and understand the gaps in your knowledge and use the right people where you need to. And this leads on to the final stage, I would say, which is just don't forget your people on the journey. You know, they're the people that helped you to get where you need to be. They're the people that you need to make it work. And then you can be the cog that drives the business forward. So 5 steps to overcome the obstacles of leadership. It's not all about, but they won't let me, as I think you've figured out from the rest of the presentation, but it's about what do I need to change? What are the true barriers? And let me be clear, if there are true barriers, and I'm not telling everyone to go and change their jobs today, but if you really have true barriers, you might want to consider if you're in the right place as well. And that's one thing to look at. And if that barrier isn't the barrier, is it a skill set barrier? Is it a behavioural barrier? Do you understand your own behaviours? You know, there's loads of stuff out there where you can do tests and figure out what your behaviours are. You could get 360 feedback, maybe not just internally, but from people that you know privately or from your network. It can be really empowering for you to get a resounding message and go, right, I need to work on that thing. So there can be lots of different barriers and that are different for everyone. And I guess I've talked about 3 then, so that's 3. And then if you're really organised, you can put a step-by-step action plan into place with a realistic time frame. You could say, right, these are the 5 things I want to achieve this year. You know, I want to be a bit bolder. I want to get a bit of coaching. I want to do some skills training. I can do that free in my spare time, actually. For example, there are many resources available, especially at the moment. Even Harvard and Yale are offering free courses at the moment. So it's a very opportune time to develop your personal skills. But also there's things like FutureLearn, which is a collaboration of lots of universities across the country that offer completely free courses in all sorts of things, everything you can think of. Hi Lorna, just to say this is being recorded, so if you could hide your video if you wouldn't like it like to be seen. And then, so once you put your step-by-step action plan into place with a realistic time frame, you can start to reevaluate that if you don't achieve your goals. But effectively, at that point, you should be able to place your order for leadership. So, you know, in theory, it's not as nice as my first slide, which just says, you know, our lovely blue sky thinking that we have when we sort of start to get into our career. But it certainly shows you a bit of a way around the obstacles to help you get there. So we have a bit of a game. In fact, we have 2 games. So this is the first game. So what I'd ask you to do, once I've explained all of this, is for you to start engaging in the chat. Unfortunately, I can't leave the discussion open because we wouldn't all be able to hear each other. But there's some of the other steering committee members are going to help facilitate the chat. So if you get a bit stuck, and we'll probably have a bit of a chat as well while you're all doing this. So my hope at the end of this is that we come to a scenario that sort of considers all the points on scenario 1 and answers some of the questions on the left, and we'll maybe find some things out. So you're the management team at a bouncy castle manufacturing business. You've been asked to deliver information to the senior leadership team. You are to convey a message based on a risk to the financial target. So that means we don't have enough money coming in based on what we said we would have for the last quarter of the year. Sales are down. The business needs to motivate employees, gain efficiencies and improve effectiveness. So lots of conflicting challenges. So what are the considerations of management? And this is what, when I say this, it's about what are the considerations of their message that they need to deliver to the SLT? What do they think the SLT need to know? Is the financial aspect of the conversation understood? What are the risks and opportunities of the message, both from a business and employee perspective? What departments need to support the SLT information? Which departments are essential to tracking and delivering the changes? And is there anything else that you can come up with? So we'll just have 10 minutes or so for that. So if you'd like to start talking in the chat now, if you're not sure how to do it, it's different on phone to a computer, but there's usually a bar. I don't know if you can all see along the top here, I've got a bar there, and mine just has more and chat, so you should be able to see. There we go. So I'll have that open over to the side so that we can still see the game, but we can also have a bit of a discussion. So let's go everyone. There we go. Right. So would anyone like to offer up some comments about what the message could be to the SLT? Okay, I'm not seeing anything coming in just yet. I don't know if that's my screen. Just going to see if, I think you need to ensure financial risk message is understood first before anything else. Yeah, absolutely. So that's probably the key thing that the business is going to need to know. Especially the senior leadership team. They need to know how bad it is. They also need to know what, yes, sales need to increase, exactly. So how do we get sales to increase? That's one of the things that I think that they'll want that message coupled with, and how are we going to do that? Or what's your management plan for action? The message has to be realistic but not alarmist. Numbers need to be clear. Absolutely. And this is an interesting one actually, Steph, because what I often have found is sometimes the managers are scared to almost tell the truth. And that's another thing that we need to consider. Is there's two points to this. It needs to be realistic and not dramatic, but it also needs to be a true reflection of what's going on. And sometimes there's a bit of fear factor there. And you know, what I've found in reality is, don't let the fear factor stop you telling the truth, because actually later it comes back to bite. So it's important to give the true message, but also maybe with caveats and ideas, so it's not a negative position that you're providing to your senior leadership team. I think it's also an opportunity for saying the key strengths we have as a team, and now is the time we can really shine. Absolutely. Now, I don't know, I would say that's an interesting one for the management to give, because I think that's a good point, and it probably they can make some suggestions to the senior leadership team about how to do that. But on the next slide, you might see whose responsibility it is for delivering that message. Yeah, absolutely. I love this one. What is the cause of the downturn? Has anyone got any ideas on what the cause of the downturn in sales could be for our scenario? Be open to the risks and state of play, but take a positive spin. Yeah, absolutely. Trying to sort of have some ideas and be forward thinking is a really good one. Needs to be an action plan. Absolutely. So maybe a roadmap to how to get back on track. track is the thing that I hear quite often, and that's a really important idea, because usually it's not just one or two things, it's actually a whole range of things that you need to do to resolve a big problem like this. Focus on inspiration. Yeah, I like that, absolutely. Again, I think that we'll see more of that in the next slide. Key message will be about motivation. Yes, again, when the management's talking to the SLT, I would say the SLT is probably, the managers are responsible for motivating the teams beneath them, but at the moment we're talking about the message for the managers to give to the SLT. So I'd say it's more focused about, you know, the roadmap, the message to the SLT and what they need to say, if that makes sense. But, you know, likewise, they also need to be positive and creating inspiration to their teams and the wider audience. Show a forecast of the current position and a realistic increase over time. Yes, I think the only question I'd have, Phoebe, is about how that would take place. But yeah, absolutely. Katie, perfect. You've hit the nail on the head. I hate to talk about it as we hear about every day, but this is, in a way, the absolute obvious scenario here, isn't it? So COVID. So we've had this awful situation and unprecedented. So maybe, for example, the business is doing absolutely beautifully, flying through till February, and then suddenly this happened and unprecedented downturns occurred. Now we're in the last quarter of the business, because this business's year end ends in March. So you haven't seen too much hit in this financial year, but what you started to see is your cash flows taking a hit. Lots of things are going on. You've maybe had to furlough some staff. Now, what do we think could then happen? So we talked about maybe having a roadmap. And in our roadmap, we need to have a plan to get back on track. Does anyone have any ideas what might happen in the later part of this year? And this is something I've been talking about a lot at the moment, so it's really worth talking about now. So we've had this massive downturn. Slowly but surely, things will get back on track and people go back to work. That's a really good one, Sarah. So is now the time to review the business model? You know, for example, a lot of businesses have had to what everyone's called pivot to make sure that they're actually able to work online. And for some businesses, that's actually been extremely empowering, just realizing what can be achieved in such a short space of time. For some businesses, it hasn't been possible or hasn't really worked. And that's, you know, really, really challenging. But then some people are starting to, you know, it might have taken a few weeks, but are starting to think about how they could actually do it. For example, some bars are offering social distancing pints now and things like that, where at the start of that, you know, it was a real hit for the brewery industry and things like that, where people just lost 70 to even 100% of their revenue overnight. Focus on innovation for the future, selling the bouncy castle to different markets. I'm going to propose a suggestion here. So, because I want to kind of guide this, because I've got an idea. So I would say that in the latter part of the year, and it's not definite, but people, once they're allowed to start congregating together in smaller groups, especially children, they might then start to want bouncy castles. In fact, it might not be this year, but it might be maybe next year. Even demand could go through the roof. So then you've got this real complicated scenario where you've actually furloughed your staff, so they're maybe not that engaged. And then you need them back, but you need to work them harder than ever. And you've got to kind of prepare that message for that as well, to try and make sure you don't lose your staff, especially your skilled staff, and that you ensure that you're financially sustainable if you're suddenly going to encounter a period of significant growth. But then you've also still got to consider that there's probably going to be some social distancing measures for a long time. You know, do you need to redesign your bouncy castles so that they actually have a section for each child or something like that, and they can go in for a different entrance? I don't know, all sorts of things. That's probably one for the marketing team or the design team. I work for a business restructuring firm and have this is a great time to do business and review on resilience planning. Yeah, absolutely. Create a savings pipeline for high spend business areas that might not give cash benefit. Zoe, that's a great one, because I think the other thing is that actually, as you change your business design, it might be that some areas of the business aren't really, where you're investing the most, aren't really as appropriate in the new climate. And that's a really pragmatic type approach that we'd want the SLT to receive, I think. Oh, I love that, Minotti. A virtual bouncy castle experience. If anyone hasn't done that, I think you're onto something there. Right. So we get the idea. These are the kinds of things we need to talk about to our SLT. So if everyone's happy, I'm going to move on to the next game, which is linked to this game, because it has to be. So you are now the SLT and you're about to deliver the message to the business. What do you need to consider? Answer these questions. So what will you say? So this is what's your message to the business. You might also want to consider what the message is to your suppliers and your customers. You might want to negotiate with your suppliers also. How will the message be managed? What might employees say? Who should deliver the message? Should this be a collective or on a departmental level, or maybe both? And name one risk and opportunity to consider. So if you want to, all feel free to start putting your suggestions forward. I'll give you a minute to absorb it. And I don't know if this is happening right now. Some of you may already be our team members, so this will be like bread and butter to you. But I would say that this is an interesting thing, isn't it, to go from one perspective and then put yourself into a different one and think about, you're probably now starting to think about some quite different things because you're in a different role that has different responsibilities. Message could come from the top, being open and honest, where the SLT do not have the answer. Say so. Absolutely, Georgina. So if the message doesn't come from the top, and I've seen this happen before, if the message gets cascaded, it's not always that effective. It's good for the message from the top to come on absolutely open communication. And what I was about to say is on many forms of media. So maybe, you know, a lot of businesses do things called town halls where they present to the whole business on an ad hoc basis. But not being able to get in a room at the moment, maybe things like using Workplace or using a Zoom conference or having a Q&A, allowing your workforce to actually put questions back to you. Being open and honest is really true. I think you really need to think about how you pitch the message as well. It's not just about saying, right, this is happening, you know, it's about, you know, also collaborating with your peers and your, you know, your business from every single role, level and department, making sure that no stone is unturned and getting the message there and gathering feedback, because it's not always that the managers have all the answers, and actually asking the wider business and telling them what you think you're going to do and gauging their view on it, you can get some really interesting and telling feedback that could completely change your plan. So it's a really empowering thing to do as well. Depends on the side of the business, absolutely, Annabelle, yeah. So if it's a small business, you'd probably just all get in a room or whatever you would do nowadays, you know, get on a call and actually just have a frank discussion with everyone. Again, you'd probably, as the leaders, still try to keep it as positive as possible, especially, you know, if you're in a smaller business and everyone already knows what's going on. It's about more about the focus of trying to keep everyone engaged and motivated and feel like that, you know, they can be confident that there's a plan and that they're part of that journey. I think it's important for SLT to give a consistent message to all staff. Yeah, absolutely. I do as well. I think the middle managers have to be involved and they have to feel empowered to do their jobs, but they don't have to deliver every single message and they don't have to be in control of it as long as they're on board with it. So that's a case of when they deliver the message to the SLT goes back and says, right, this is what I want you to do. This is why, what do you think? And making sure that, you know, everyone's on board before it then gets cascaded. I prefer a collective message initially so that everyone gets the same message at the same time, then maybe a departmental discussions. Helen, I totally agree with that. I do just think that sometimes the managers need to know first, but then keep it to themselves till it gets cascaded, just so that it's not a surprise to them, because a lot of the time they do have to ensure that whatever that message is actually gets delivered. So just to make sure that they're on board with it as well. By the way, I'm not the oracle in all of this. These are just my assertions. Message needs to go out as a headline by the SLT, but then the detailed impacts and actions on different departments and by local management. Absolutely, that is exactly right. And if that is done right, and I've seen it done right on a lot of occasions, it's really effective and it really works. And that's really using your management structure and your design of your business to get the outcomes that you want. Being clear and honest, yeah, absolutely. Thinking about the channels, so various forms of social media, maybe face-to-face in the future, and getting feedback, absolutely. So I think we're pretty confident on that one, that we know what we need to do. And as you can see, nearly all of the focus is on messaging, communication, and making sure that you get that relationship piece right, really, isn't it? Employees will want to know what, yes, Annabelle, I love that. Employees will want to know what impact it will have on them and what the timescales might be. That's the part about the roadmap, because it might be that the management deliver a roadmap to SLT, but a few things we've got to consider as an SLT is, do we have the money to do all the things we need to do to get back on track? And if not, what decisions need to be made? The business needs to be aware of some of those decisions, maybe not all of them if we don't have the information. It could be that you deliver it in tranches as the information arises, and you agree to deliver regular updates on the situation as it evolves, and just tell them what you know each time. And that's a safer thing than trying to say, right, we're going to build this new system, we're going to replace this, we're going to change this team, and everyone goes into a state of panic, and the IT department haven't got a clue what they're building or when by, and don't really know where the funds are coming from. And also, I think another thing here is businesses at this point can be really thinking innovatively about how to source funds. So it's not all about, right, let's grow sales. That's one channel. But if sales are really slow in an extreme scenario like this, it might be a bit of innovative thinking, such as, are there any government grants available? Can I borrow some money? Can I afford to repay that money if I do borrow it? What's the impact of the end of furlough, and how do we deal with then re-onboarding the staff? Is there going to be a significant cost of moving everyone to a socially distanced office? So there's many things that need to be considered, but there's also a lot of opportunities to think of a way around it. For many businesses, especially if they've got an ethical basis, there's an opportunity there to have conversations with people who support them, and just asking them for their support in different ways. It could be through programs, it could be through leadership guidance, it could be through mental health awareness. So there's lots of things available that could also help with the motivational piece of this as well, I think. So it's about the financials, but it's also about all the moving parts that create that feeling that your business actually cares about you, and that they're really going to tackle this, and they have a proper phased plan for it, and it doesn't just consider the things that get more money or more profit. So moving on to the next one then. So this is the second and last game. You'll be sad to know. So this is a little bit different. So you're an interviewee, and the interview is for an SLT role, reporting to the board. So you've finally gone on your journey, you've got to your interview. How do you prepare? This is a really hard one. I found that out myself a few times. What attributes are the board looking for? What do you know about the role? Do you understand the business? Do you understand the industry? What might be your stumbling blocks, and how will you shine? So feel free to start giving me lots of suggestions on that. And I'll tell you a little story about the first time I went for a role in an external business as quite a senior role. So, and I didn't actually get this job, interestingly, but never mind. So this role particularly, I'd been in a senior management role for quite a bit of time when I went for this role. And I got offered the role, and I thought, that's something I can do. I tick all the boxes on there. There's a couple of things I don't understand. I won't tell you too much because I don't want to give away where it was and make them look bad, or me look bad. And I was asked to create a presentation, and it was also for a financial role. So for a senior financial role, often you find the spec is literally, you need to be able to do everything. So this is, you need to understand financial accounts, you need to understand the whole business, you need to understand the industry even though you've never worked in it. You need to be able to understand scenarios from that industry and present the financial problem solving for it in your interview. You need to be able to demonstrate leadership skills and management skills, and that you've done that in applied setting in the past. You need to show confidence, and you need to create a presentation that addresses all these things, and then you need to present it to a board. Now, this isn't something that you would commonly do in a more, as you go up the ladder. It certainly wasn't when I was going up the ladder, but it's not the same everywhere. I know on grad schemes now, they're getting really encouraged to do that, which I think is brilliant. So one of the things that happened to me is I spent about probably 4 days creating this presentation. It probably took me about 20 hours, and I'm not joking. You know, it's really hard to think, 'cause it's almost like your CV, then your solution to their problem, even though you don't know it, which could seem a little bit like you think you know it all. And it's also got to be delivered in the design. You know, a lot of businesses have their own way of designing things and presenting things. You don't really know how that is. You might not be great at PowerPoint. And then for me, there was then a 3-month gap while the business decided that they were going to defer the role. So I waited 3 months. I was very excited because I really wanted this role. And then at the end of the 3 months, I went to an interview, and the presentation feedback wasn't brilliant. I thought the presentation itself was good because I'm okay at PowerPoint. But I think the way I delivered it didn't address what that business was looking for. And what also happened as a result of that was I actually ended up being in the selection process for the second phase with another person. So they then did psychometric testing on us, and they questioned quite a lot about me not having a degree. And this is really interesting for me after sort of you know, I think it was about 15 years of working at that point. So I thought, oh, I don't know that that matters. I've got AAT and ACCA, you know, why do I need a degree now? But some people are quite traditional like that. Anyway, and at the end of the journey, after the psychometric test, which is about another week, so we're talking about 3.5 months in now. These processes go a little bit slower unless you're in the same company and you're going for a leadership role. I finally didn't get the job. So I'd wasted all that time, I'd stopped looking elsewhere, and actually, you know, it hadn't worked out. Now I was so close. I didn't feel bad about it in some ways because I felt it was a really good learning journey about what that process might look like. And also I learned a lot about myself and how I should pitch it and what I did wrong. So in a way, it was really educational experience. And it is probably more indicative of a similar process you might experience when you get to a really senior role. So I've got some questions in now. Thanks for that, everyone. So exactly, be prepared. Make sure you have some really good questions to ask at the end. Be authentic. If that doesn't work for you, then the organisation's not right for you. Absolutely. If you haven't been in an SLT role before, you might think about how you can highlight your transferable skills. Yeah, absolutely. And I found that really useful in the past. If you can even tell a story that takes them from your skills in your industry to those skills in their industry, I've found that quite helpful and has worked for me in the past. And because you've got to think that also when you're going to an interviewer, they don't always understand your industry. So it's for you to help them get there in terms of seeing the vision of how those skills are transferable. If there are knowledge gaps, perhaps be proactive in learning. Absolutely. For example, I once went for an interview at a power station, and I started signing up to all the World Health Organizations and the environmental world, the various different environmental, I don't remember any of it because I didn't continue with that. But when I was looking up all this stuff, I was learning loads about the industry, and I took some of that to the interview, and again, used the applied knowledge that I already had to be able to explain to them, oh, this is why I could probably help you, because even though I've done something different, I now understand what your industry is kind of vaguely all about, but bear with me, especially if you do it like that, rather than, you know, coming across it because you've read up a load of stuff, you actually understand it. That's a really good way to pitch it as well. Okay, so what might be your stumbling blocks? So what might be your stumbling blocks? So what might you get caught out on? I'll give you a great one. What is the worst thing you've ever done at work? Anyone ever had that? Or please describe a mistake that you've made. So that's one that comes up a lot, and it comes up at all levels. So you've probably had it before, but it's really important in a role like this that you think about what that mistake is and how you can present it, and being careful to I think the really important thing is, as well is, you know, SLT members, they need to be pragmatic, balanced, logical, lateral thinking. So if you go in and explain that problem and then have a bit of blame culture in it, or they can find tones of that you're not going to be a team player, you've lost that job straight away almost. So it's really thinking about your behaviours when you give that, because I think that that's really what people are looking for at this level. Okay. How will you shine? So what's going to make you stand out? Has anyone got any suggestions on how to shine in an SLT interview? Okay, so I'm going to give some suggestions of my own. So I think some examples of how you can shine is be yourself, be positive, and demonstrate something that you've got that is almost like your unique selling point. So that's the thing that I find is there's always, you know, everyone who's going for your role is going to have your paper skills. So it's more about what other skills can you demonstrate. They really care about projects, what you've achieved. And it's not necessarily just what you've achieved, but it's how you achieved it. They might be interested to hear, well, I did this project with all these people, but then it was going off track. But what I did to help to rein it in was I worked with all these different departments. I created a program, you know, whatever it may be. It depends on your role. It's going to be very different. But the point is being able to explain how you would tackle a real problem and how you would overcome it, and showing that you've got the skills to overcome things in the right way. Yeah, so yeah, go with your ideas of how you improve the business, absolutely. So if you do understand the business, it's so much easier. But if you don't, just try to really put yourself in the position of the business and the industry, almost like an actor or actress would when they're trying to get ready to deliver their screenplay. You know, what is it that you think that they need, and address that in your all of your answers. Because if everything that you're offering up on the plate solves a lot of what you think their problems might be, you're halfway there. Be clear about your pitch and focus on your USP. Yeah, absolutely. Right, so now we're going to be the interviewer for this role. So again, similar to the last game, we flipped it on its head. We're now on the other perspective, other side of the table. We're now Alan Sugar. Maybe not. Maybe Karen Brady. The interview is for an SLT role, reporting to the board. You've recently lost 2 people in the role. One was aggressive and the other one was not confident and poor at communicating. Awful problem to have. What are the 3 questions you would ask? What are you considering at this point? So what are you thinking about when you're talking to this candidate? What do you expect the responses to be? What is your, so this is more, what do you want the interviewee to respond and say with your questions, and what is your risk and opportunity in the process? And that one's a really important one. Yeah, I love that, Minotti. Absolutely. Don't wait for someone else's approval is definitely correct. Just go in there and deliver who you are, and if you don't get it, what's the worst that can happen? Move on to the next one. Right, so shall we start with what the 3 questions are that we could ask? Let's come up with a set of questions that someone interviewing for an SLT role might ask. Okay, so I'm going to think of a suggestion here. Can you explain what your previous role was and how you demonstrated leadership skills in that role? Another one might be, can you describe some of the projects you've worked on and where you fitted into the project and how you made it work? And you might not be the owner of the project. Brilliant, I love that. What is your view of what a leader should be? Because that will really help the interviewer to figure out if the person actually thinks in the mindset of a leader. They might also ask what experience you have, you know, what have you got that makes you the person that's right for this role? You know, how can you describe the things that you've done and have made you ready for this next level? What are the main reasons you want to join our SLT? Yeah, absolutely. It's a really open question. Open questions are great because it gives the person a chance to speak. I guess if you were the person being interviewed, you'd need to be careful that you don't overspeak and undo the good parts, and be really careful about thinking about what you say. What are the company's strengths and weaknesses? That's a really good one. Yeah, so especially if you understand the industry, easier again, but you can always understand the company's weaknesses. And I'll give you a little tip. Every time I go for a job, I go onto Companies House and download their accounts. Now, not everyone's going to have the knowledge to be able to read a set of accounts, but you can certainly see cash. You can see if they've got enough cash. You can see if they've not got much cash. You can see if they've got creditors, and creditors are the people they owe lots of money to. And if that's more than their debtors, then that suggests that they've got a bit of a problem with their creditors. Now, I would be very careful about pitching that, but you could ask a nicely worded question, because sometimes in creditors, there's things like the money owes money to its other sister companies, or it's got a parent company, and actually the parent company's got all the money, and the, you know, sister company or whatever, or other companies in the chain maybe don't have the money. And so for roles I've been in, that's helpful. And also for an SLT role, they nearly always want you to have some knowledge of finance. So that's a really key thing that I can certainly offer up as a bit of advice for people that don't know. So if you don't have financial skills, I would suggest acquiring them if you want an SLT role. Even if they're not the most elaborate finance skills, just do some basic courses, understand the terminology, because you will be asked to review information and you'll be needed to articulate it and understand what it says and make decisions on it. Describe a time you encountered a problem and how did you overcome it. We'll get a sense of their aggression, communication, confidence. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's where people start to let everything out, and you can really see, and you'll either usually at that point as the interviewer go, awesome, or oh dear. How do they match up to the company values and culture? Absolutely, Becky. So for me is, you know, they could be the best candidate on earth. They could be practically, they could have all the skills, but if they don't align to the culture and you don't think that they're going to fit in well with the team, it might be that the cultural fit just wouldn't work, and actually you'd create problems that are not necessarily to do with that candidate skill set. And also it wouldn't be very good for the candidate to take them on into that kind of a senior role if they weren't really the right fit for the business. If you hadn't had a just right fit before, ask about a scenario in which they handled their emotions with senior stakeholders, namely aggression, shine. Brilliant. Yeah, that will certainly get a few cats out of the bag, wouldn't it? Oh, sorry to see you go, Jessica. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, and no problem at all. So we're just nearly finished for everyone else on the call, going through the slides, but there's just a couple more I've got for you. So I just want to say, we probably didn't talk about the risk and opportunity in the process. So the risk and opportunity in the process is, for me, is if the board member that's employing the candidate gets it wrong, they could potentially really damage the big business, and they've already had some problems, so they can't really afford to get this one wrong. Not only that, it could have financial repercussions, it could have operational repercussions, it could affect the workforce. It could, you know, if it's for, say, a senior marketing role, it could result in the business not having the reputation it needs to grow and to shine and to meet the plan. So there's so many things that for an interviewer they have to consider at this level. They need to consider the relationship of, you know, if the stakeholders have got a relationship with, say, investors or with contractors or with suppliers. All of these things have to be taken into account when you're recruiting for a role. So it's much more difficult than recruiting for a role at a more junior level. Okay, right. So in summary then, did you find that leadership's not straightforward? Hopefully you did. A variety of skills are needed. So I've just written a few here: decisiveness, responsibility, big picture thinking, creativity, ability to overcome failure, confidence without arrogance, appropriate communication, and trust is critical. And I think we've built up the whole journey for all of this. So I hope you all feel that that's what we've kind of achieved. So why is it not straightforward, and why do we have to have all these skills? Well, leaders need to be followed to create change, to sustain and to grow. Leaders at all levels need some leadership skills, but must apply them in different ways. Leaders need to lead by design and motivation. And how do we do this? Set yourself apart, develop soft skills, gather more qualifications and relevant experience, and a few examples are there. You know, a lot of, especially SLT roles and maybe C-suite roles, so the chiefs, you know, they might require an MBA or something similar, and it's very hard to get some of these roles without having one, even though you might feel you've done everything you need to do to get to the top. You might want to invest in that yourself, because it's very hard to get invested in to get one of those if you haven't already got one. And obviously, like I said, develop your financial skills. You will need them no matter what your SLT role is. And the more you have, the more seriously you honestly get taken. It's not just about that, but it's a really important one. And strategy. You need to think strategically, you need to understand strategy, and you need to be able to spot opportunities and understand how to create a plan out of maybe sometimes nothing. So that's me, and they're all my perceptions. So I'm just going to hide the chat again for now, and I'm going to go to a few notes I wrote on this, because I found them quite interesting, but I didn't write them all down in advance. So this is, I actually did this when I was doing my ACCA training, and I was thinking for all the business models that I learned, I thought this is the one that supports this message. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you probably, a lot of you will have heard of it, created in 1943 originally. And isn't it so obvious? Well, when I go through it, you'll probably agree. So it was actually called a theory of human motivation, and it's not regarded as, it's regarded as an imperfect model, but it's a really good concept. And actually, it's just really logical and practical. And I don't, my daughter actually is doing a thing, an educational thing, which is the software provided to schools. And it's really good because what it does is it looks at, in school, students are meant to move on to the next level, even if they haven't got the building blocks below them for the first level. And then so they're constantly, so those gaps never get filled in. They might go back on a few things really quickly the next year, but if they haven't got those core building blocks made, then actually they might really struggle at the next levels and the next levels, and it gets worse and worse, and it's perpetuating. So actually this software that we bought, it allows her to redo everything, even if it's year 4. If there's something from year 4 she fundamentally doesn't understand, she may well need that in the GCSE years, but if she's never done it, so what it does, it allows you to redo it. And I think that this also applies to leadership, and certainly Maslow does too. So he didn't actually design the pyramid, but what it effectively does is says, right, first of all, you need to complete every single block of this 100% before moving on to the next one. I'm not sure I totally agree with that, but I get the concept is you need to have pretty stable physiological needs. So you need to have food and water, and then safety and security. The next one is love and belonging. And love and belonging is about maybe having relationships and maybe feeling a sense of community and, you know, really being part of something that's moving forward. Then you've got self-esteem. So with self-esteem, we're talking about, you know, having a bit of prestige, respect, you know, really feeling empowered maybe. Then self-actualization. So you actually, at the start, this was where he got to, and he said, right, now you've kind of got there. But then latterly he rethought his thinking, and I don't know if he ever actually added it to a paper, but he certainly talked about it quite a bit. And it was the concept of self-transcendence. So effectively, once you've got there, you've realized you're a leader, brilliant, okay. But the final stage to that is almost like in the Buddhist concepts, is being able to elevate above all of that, and just actually your personal concerns are no longer of concern, and it's all about your perspective and your thinking, your way of being, that it sort of supersedes all these things because they're just kind of natural to you by this point. So I think that's a brilliant leadership model, actually, myself. So finally, quotes on leadership, and you'll have seen loads of these before. I'm not a product of my circumstances, I'm a product of my decisions, by Stephen Covey. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you're a leader. I've heard that loads, by John Quincy Adams. Integrity is the most valuable and respected quality of leadership. Always keep your word. That's a hard one because you've got to remember to do everything you ever say you're going to do. By Brian Tracy. And a boss loves power, a leader loves people. And that's probably my favourite one on this. And that's by Eric Calantry. So just a few little takeaways for you all there. And back to the room. So I'll hand over to Zoe now for the close. But thanks everyone for listening, for your time today. I hope it was useful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jo. I've got all my notes here. It's been really insightful.
Oh, thank you.
So with this session being on leadership, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to actually share resources that Lean In has available online. So I'll just add the website into the chat. And what we have are a series of videos on the different types of leadership skills you may want to develop: negotiation strategies, work-life balance, seeing bias and how to overcome that in your workplace. So that'll be a great opportunity for you to tap into those skills, and like we mentioned about the development gaps or the knowledge gaps, you'll be able to develop those. So it's a really great resource to use. Also, if you do have any questions, or if you would like the PowerPoint slide, as Jo mentioned, we can share this from our Gmail. So I've also shared the email further up in the chat, I think, but it's just leaninleads@gmail.com. So also, if you have any ideas on any agenda items you'd like to see? Do you have any Breakfast Club ideas? Would you like to be more involved in the creation of these events? And then also we mentioned the mentoring scheme. So if you are interested in becoming a mentor, if you drop us an email as well, just on the right hand of the slide. But that's all from me.
Saying all
So
these lovely
thank you.
messages, I'm distracted. Thanks everyone. That's really nice. There we go.
Perfect. And then obviously all of our social is on below as well.
Shall I go on to the next slide?
Yes, yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So this is a new one.
So Jo, would you like to discuss the agenda?
Yeah, so us as a steering group have spent several hours agreeing this and coming up with it, and I'm really excited about it because this is a result of the session that we had in January where we got about 80 of you in a room at Sky Betting and Gaming, and we had a load of Slido quizzes and asked you lots of questions about what you want to see for this organisation, I suppose, for our circle. And so what we've done is we've taken all the data and done a little Excel spreadsheet on it, which is obviously my favourite thing to do. And we deliberated and debated and discussed all the things. So we tried to get a really good mix. We've brought in some new channels. So you'll see that we're going to do some lightning talks, which are just a few short sessions that are going to be on how to do something, which we're going to share on social media. And obviously Zoe mentioned that we've now got the YouTube channel, which we thank Claire Ackers for setting up. We've still got our evening sessions and breakfast clubs because a lot of you are obviously used to the format of what we've got available, and we didn't want to move away from that. And also we wanted to offer the people the opportunity to still engage with those things. And, you know, once we can get back to face, we'll hopefully be able to go back to the Barclays Eagle Labs in the morning. And there's a lot of people gave us opportunities to use different venues as well when we got the feedback in January. So we may be able to broaden our scope of venues and the people that we attract to those venues later in the year, but we can't obviously be confident about that at this stage. So at the moment, as you can see, we've only really planned to August and it's all on Zoom at the moment. But you can see we've got some really exciting things coming up. So as Zoe mentioned, she's actually going to be doing the lightning talk on how to create a leaning circle. And we've got the launch of the mentoring program that's already ongoing. So if you haven't done your, you know, if you haven't signed up for that, please feel free. We absolutely need more mentors. We've got about 20 mentees at the moment. Sorry, other way around, 40 mentees, 20 mentors. So we need about 20 more. So that's quite a big gap. And it'd be lovely to be able to match all our mentees with a mentor, because obviously further to this, it's very important to have one. We've got Breakfast Club panel discussion coming up, to be confirmed what that subject is. We're going to have a little bit of a chat about that in a few weeks. Claire's got some ideas, and that's going to also come from feedback from the people that have been at the previous breakfast clubs. We've got an LGBTQ plus event on inclusivity on the 9th of June, and Katie, who's on today, and Sarah have been working hard to develop something exciting for you there. We've got a breakfast club on mindfulness coming, which I believe Minotti is going to deliver. She's also on this call today, and she's got a lot of experience in this sort of thing. So I'm really looking forward to that myself. I'm not going to talk you through the whole agenda because you can read it all, but I was just sort of talking through the next few. And you can see that, you know, we've got dates, times, modes, etc. You can see we've got some online drinks planned, and we've got a bit of a Christmas thing planned, and we've got a picture problem, which is going to be a dragon's den. So hopefully you'll find there's a nice mix of things, and a really exciting year ahead. So I think that's everything from me. Is anyone else from the steering group got anything else they'd like to add?
Nothing for me, just a thank you, Jo, for the session. It's been really insightful, and I think we can see from the chat that everyone's really enjoyed it. So
Yeah, that's
absolutely, it was brilliant.
Yeah, thanks, Jo.
No problem at all. Thanks everyone, and thanks for your support. I couldn't do it without you. And also someone's asked what the YouTube channel's called. Will we put that up on social media? Ah, Debbie shared. Zoe shared it. Debbie. Sorry. Right, lovely. So I guess we'll let you all get on with your day. So thanks everyone for your feedback, for joining, for your participation. I found it a lot of fun. I hope you did too.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Speak soon. Thanks. Bye.